And that's a real issue that we're having with China. Now, of course, as usual in this channel, what I want to point out is not so much the obvious, not so much the news, but what it really means for my subscribers. And what does it really mean? Okay. First of all, let's talk about what's happening. Then let's talk about potential investment implication for you. And then ultimately, how is this going to play? What's going to be the end game? Well, what's going on right now, obviously, is there is a deal, quote unquote, with China. And the deal that we're having is really, we're going to be talking to China, we're going to be negotiating with China. We don't really have a deal, but basically we're looking at almost 50% tariffs, and they give U.S. access to the, they're giving access to the, to rare minerals. That's very important for the U.S. Okay, so but we've kind of heard the news. We've kind of seen what's going on. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is this: there are opportunities for you when it comes to rare earth mineral, and I will talk to you about that. And ultimately, what's going to happen is there is kind of a decoupling happening here. My view is that what has been happening all along is China, since they entered the World Trade Organization in 2000, they basically have improved their ability to produce things. Now, as they've been improving their ability to produce, what has happened? Well, they have gone better. They have done more. They've produced. They have increased. They're doing very well. I mean, I don't know if you know that, but from a purely statistics and a purely in terms of their defense numbers, their defense numbers is pretty high. We are looking at China and the current deals with the US. You've heard the news, you know what's happening. I'm not going to go over it. But the point I'm going to make to you is this. There are stocks opportunities. There are currently a deal in the work, not finished, but tied to rare minerals, and explain what that is. And then I will tell you about the fact that we have a decoupling ongoing. And that decoupling is going to be a problem, because if it doesn't goes well, if that decoupling doesn't go well, then we're in trouble. Potential war, potential something happening. Why? Well, you need to understand that currently the situation, if you look at the situation in China, in terms of its ability, its growth prospect, the key risk in China right now is deflation. What do you care about deflation? Well, it means that the producer price index has been falling for 33 consecutive months. Weak consumer confidence, property market fragility, and an aging population. China is in trouble, my friends. China is in big trouble. You may not know it, but this is where you need a channel like this. You need a channel like this to really explain to you what's going on, so you understand the principles, so you can make your own mind in terms of investment, in terms of whatever else you need to, in order for you to understand what's happening. So China has an aging population, but the most important thing is deflation. Deflation means that the stuff that used to cost $10, now it's costing $8 and $7. It's the opposite of inflation, which is fantastic, right? This is great. Well, not so much. It is not so much because you need to sell it. And for you to sell it, you have to export it. And for you to export it, someone has to be willing to accept the lower prices associated with deflation, right? That's a real problem. Now, the problem comes because Trump basically said, you know what? It's tariff times, everyone. You're going to be paying tariffs. Therefore, I will not accept your product. Therefore, you can't sell to me. And so China is basically saying, okay, fine, then you're not getting any rare earth minerals. It's literally what's happening. You get this US saying, I need the rare earth mineral. This is a big, important deal. This rare earth mineral is huge. Why is this huge? Because China, over the past 20 years, have increased its capacity. They control 90% of the global processing capability of rare earth. That is fantastic what they've done, right? While everybody was sleeping, they basically, to their record, why not? What they've done is they've gotten to get the rare earth mineral done in a way for them that they only want to know how to process it. Why do you care about rare earth minerals? Well, you care for two reasons. First of all, you may not realize it, but it's extremely important. It goes into iPhone. Well, I guess it is important. No, forget the iPhone. It also goes into weapons, into missiles. And the second reason why you need rare earth minerals, and this is strictly for you to make money, is that those stocks have gone up a lot. I mean, recently, earlier this month, America, largest rare earth miner, remember that name? You heard it. MP Minerals said that they had reached a deal under which the Pentagon would take a stake of 15% in the company. As part of the deal, the US government committed to invest billions of dollars in the Las Vegas-based company. The stock is up 100%. MP Materials. Start looking into rare earth minerals. Now, having said that, in my own Patreon channel, on June 15th, take a look at it, it's free. On June 17th, I posted a bunch of companies, and one of them I posted is called IDR. And IDR is also another rare earth mineral company. And the stock was, I think in June it was $14 when I recommended it. And now it is up, it went up to almost 22, and now it's around 19. And it has been there before. And the P ratio is low at 32. Forward P 24, still acceptable. And it is a small cap, 279 million the market cap. And it is growing. Sales, we went from 5.6, 7.6, 9, 13, and $25 million. Company's growing. Company's small caps. Why not take it? These are the type of information that I provide. Who do you think is going to win? Unfortunately, what's happening right now is China, before Trump, was basically producing everything. And look what they did with the rare mineral. I mean, I didn't even know what rare minerals were last year. And when I heard Trump talking about, we need the rare mineral with Ukraine, I said, why do we care about the minerals? What are we going to do with the minerals? Is it gold? No, this is a very key component for missiles, for iPhones. And without it, you can't do it. And guess what? China, very quietly, to their benefit, are now controlling 90% of rare earth mineral. China exports of rare mineral earth magnets to the US in particular fell in June, dropping 52%. And it represented an improvement in May when it dropped 93%. So you may or may not have realized, and this is extremely important for you to understand, when Trump was talking tariffs, China, 50%, 100%, we don't want to do business with them, you have to realize that the shipment of these things dropped by 93%. Now it has recovered somewhat, but we're not back. This is not business as usual, right? We're back to 50% drop still. So what's happening is China is saying, do you want the rare earth mineral? Then you need to take the stuff off my hand because I have deflation. I have a huge amount of deflation. I don't know what to do with it because all my factories are producing a lot of stuff and I need to sell it. Europe went there, and we'll talk about Europe. We'll talk about Epstein, obviously, because I have to talk about it. This is a big topic, and we'll talk again about the Fed chair, because that's a developing situation. But let's finish the situation. Let's go over this thing very carefully. I suggested Blackstone last week, informed to put on a callback in April at 125 with a strike of 132 currently 178. Blackstone is a great interesting stuff as well, but we'll talk about that later. But right now, the point I'm trying to make is that China wants to get rid of this stuff that they have. And what happened is the European, by the way, trying to negotiate right now, currently, August 1st is coming, so that's another big topic for the August 1st deadline of the tariffs. But basically, the European went to China. And they said, okay, can we deal? Can we deal with China? Okay, because can can we deal because the U.S. I don't know how much we're going to pay. We don't want to pay more than 15%, and he's thinking 30%, and Trump is very unreliable. We don't know what he's going to do. And China says, sure, let's deal. Now I'm your friend. Okay, well, you got to take all the stuff that I made, the shoes, the pair, the everything that I have. I have too much. I have deflation. I have so much stuff that I don't know what to do with it. Of course, Europe is saying, well, but you do have this human rights and you're a friend with Ukraine. Why do I have to deal with this? Why can Trump leave things well enough and couldn't you leave it the way it was? It was so nice before. We had no tariffs and it was great. But that's not. This is why Trump is changing the world order. China works hard for a long time. Yes, they've been working for a long time. They've been working at it since 2020 when they joined. Do you think that this will further? Well, exactly. That's exactly what's going to happen, because BRICS now, and they have to be careful. They have to be careful because Trump, the U.S., is 25% GDP, so you can't just eliminate them completely. But I think what has been happening is China had been slowly building its inventory, its ability to produce, to make, and collect. But Trump came in too soon. He came in and he said, that's it, we're stopping everything. He said, are you sure? Because don't you want the rare minerals? And he said, well, don't you want to get rid of your deflation? That's basically the inside scoop. That's the discussion that's back and forth. That's why they say, okay, fine, we're going to increase the rare minerals for 50%, as opposed to down 93%, but still, we're not totally happy. And Trump says, yeah, but I'm not going to give up either, okay? Because we need to start making stuff. So basically what's happening deep down, there's a decoupling here, right? There's a decoupling. The U.S., because what do you think? The U.S. is taking a 15% stake in NP Materials. And this is just one item. This is not everything, but this is an important item. What do you think the U.S. is taking? Because they want to make the stuff here. What do you think these stuffs have been going up? There is rare minerals in the U.S., but you forgot how to do them. What's the number that I have? 90%. After years at which China took market share from the U.S., the country now produces about 2/3 of the world rare earth minerals, 2/3, and processes around 90% of the supply. They've been the very, very little busy bee for all these years. And now, of course, they're collecting the price. This is just on one item, right? I mean, there are other things that they're doing, and we don't have time to deal with everything. But I want you to understand, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what I'm looking for, besides giving you what's really happening, but this is not a news-driven channel, where this is a channel looking for risks, understanding, and opportunity. For example, right now, you should definitely look into rare earth mineral type of company, A-Class. The mining of rare earth minerals is arduous and expensive. It is. And that's why China was more than happy to do it. And the US was more happy to let them do it for years and years, and a bunch of other things too. But now, China has a lot of access to rare earth mineral through its Belt and Road Initiative deals. Now, I like what Vanilla is talking about, because basically this is the Belt and Road. So basically what they said is, okay, you know what? We're going to finance all this stuff for you to do it, and we own it. Now, the US has been sleeping for a while. Now, one thing you have to say, you may or may not like Trump, but he's saying that's enough. Why is it enough? Because we need to be able to produce a rare earth mineral, because you need it in the weapons. You need it. You need to produce stuff. I mean, we heard about in COVID, the pharmaceutical thing. We heard about that. That was an issue. Forget pharmaceutical. You need weapons. Now, I will tell you that if you take a look at what's going on with China in terms of its weaponry, not that we're going to be at war with China right now, although we have to be very careful, because if you don't buy their stuff and they are crawling, right, they are parting at a loss with slave labor. Yeah, I mean, that's how it's done, quite frankly. But if you keep doing it that way and you don't buy their stuff, at some point, don't forget, China is not doing so great. You have an aging population, you have deflation. What do you think is going to happen ultimately? You're going to piss them off. No free answer, but overpriced is not fear. I agree. So if you're not going to pay and you're not going to buy, then my people are going to be very unhappy. And if the Chinese people start to get upset because they don't have a job, and you're going to have to produce something. And then, my friends, you may have to produce weapons. And this is a concern over the long term. I mean, beyond, we're talking beyond Trump right now. But by the numbers, still, the US is spending about 850 billion of defense. China, 245. Active duty personnel, the US has 1.3 million. China has 2 million soldiers. Of course, you're going to say, well, who's better? Well, it depends. I would say where the US is clearly stronger right now, global power projection and logistics, air dominance, nuclear deterrent, undersea warfare. But this is old strategies, right? Where China is strongest and catching up fast is the shipbuilding scale, hypersonic and ballistic missiles, rapid nuclear expansion, cyber and space. So the same way they were working, being very busy little bees, working and building rare minerals, now what they're doing is that they are getting ready. Is the US president not a planted puppet? Come on, let's not get into that topic, okay? This is not a political channel. This is a channel to figure out what are the risks. What are the risks involved? And the risk that I see right now, the most important risk that I see right now, is basically China needs to sell its stuff, okay? I feel that the US pulling US and could open more opportunity to China to take their soft power. I mean, you need each other, okay? You need each other. It wouldn't be simply sinking money into companies with a strong R&D budget for developing new processes for mining and processing rare earth mineral. Wouldn't this imply that sinking money into companies? Well, that's what they're doing. The US is doing that right now because the US needs to do something quick. The thing is, you need China. China needs the US, right? Because the US, the only thing is, the way the US helped China before, it was basically paying them with dollars. And of course, when you're making something, what is the best way to learn something? But doing it. The more you do it, the better at it you become. This is what Socrates used to say. You want to be good at something? Do it over and over, and then you will come. And that's what happened with China. They got better at it. And what was U.S. exporting? It was exporting the dollar. It was sending the money. But then Trump said, guys, we forgot how to make things. But that's okay because, we're having and we send the dollars. What happens when they say, we don't need your dollars anymore? We don't need it. But we need the rare earth minerals to protect ourselves. But we need the chips. We need all these things. The US really needs to put $1 trillion in defense budget and stay in depth. Unfortunately, you can't do that either, right? Because now the US can't afford to borrow anymore. Well, they could afford to borrow as long as the US is a reserve currency. The dollar is a reserve currency. But when that stops, so the risk is you give them the dollar, they become stronger and stronger, meaning that they know how to make this thing. And then one day they could turn around and said, we don't need the dollar anymore. In fact, be careful. China, for the first time, the UK has now surpassed China in terms of collecting and buying treasuries. So now the UK has more treasuries than China. That never happened before. What does that mean? It means China is not buying is not buying treasuries. What do we care? You care about it because then what's going to happen if you can't sell your treasuries are going to get higher, more expensive. The Lion King says why US is spending $1 trillion in defense to continue wars for the benefit well, I don't know if it's a benefit of Israel, but the U.S. needs to spend more money. The U.S. needs to protect itself. Why? Because this is a dangerous world. But right now, what has been happening, unfortunately, is that the U.S. has stopped forgetting how to make things. I mean, the rare earth mineral is a great example as to how the U.S. fell, and this is the only reason why the U.S. is dealing with China now. They want the rare earth mineral, but China knows it. They say, well, I'm not going to give it to you. Fine. And I mean, we went from 92% drop, after this big surprise to 52%, but still, we're not back to getting all that rare earth minerals, and Trump knows it. When I say Trump, I mean his whole people behind him. They realize it, okay? The U.S. forgot about healthcare, and they don't even talk about it. That's right. That's right. And during COVID, we forgot to make how to make vaccines and pharmaceutical. 2/3 of the pharmaceutical items are not made in the U.S. but overseas. The U.S. doesn't produce its rare earth minerals. So what are you going to do? You need to you need to work it out. Somehow it needs to happen. How is that going to happen when your opponent is saying, no, I know what you want. I'm not giving it to you. What I'm not giving it to you either. So at some point, and this is why very recently there is this article that came through that the U.S., that Trump wants to talk business back to China. Why? Because he realizes, okay, we need to do something, okay? Trump is shifting to deal-making mode on China. This is a very recent article. White House puts a priority on doing business with Beijing, and it prepares for bilateral talks next week. That's what's happening. And this is why I'm here to tell you that underneath, they need to deal with China. There's no other way. But at the same time, you have to be careful, because China knows what you're doing, right? These people are not stupid, right? U.S. is no longer the ruling state anymore. They're preparing for the... Well, I will say this. The situation that Trump is in right now is going to be very, very difficult, okay? It's going to be difficult because, and China too. Of course, China probably would have preferred someone else. They would have rather this keeps on going for a little bit while longer, right? So they keep learning more and more. Don't forget, the circle of Valerie Paris is a circle around China where 10% landmass is 50% of the population. What does that mean? That means they don't really need the US. They could start selling to India or Bangladesh or even Europe if they wanted to. So they don't need, right? Because they've learned how to do it. And the more you learn how to do something, the better off you're going to be. So the argument is this. For you, my subscribers, what I want you to do is you need to start to look at rare mineral type of companies. Now, of course, it's always better before the fact, not after the fact, right? Because you could say, well, let me go and buy, what is that company? MP Minerals, MP Materials. MP Materials is trading under it's called MP basically, right? The stock is currently trading at $62. It was at around $30 until the announcement. So that's a little bit of expensive. And even if you go back, at some point it used to trade at $55. So it's not the highest it's ever been. It is the highest, but there's been $50 before. And if you take a look at the other stock that I'm talking about, which is IDR, currently at $19, down from about $22, there's a possibility. So from a geopolitical aspect, what we need to figure out is what are the risks? What is the risk that we have right now? Well, the reason you're seeing Taiwan written there is obviously Taiwan is going to be an issue, because Taiwan, obviously this is where I believe all of the semiconductors are made, right? Everything is made in Taiwan. I believe that the percent, what percent of semiconductors are made there? I think it's around, it's a lot. What percentage of semiconductors, are made in Taiwan? I would say there's a lot. And obviously, China is saying anytime I want. Oh boy, you're not going to like that number. No, semiconductors, I'll tell you what it does, right? It's everywhere. Taiwan produces over 60% of the world's semiconductors overall. It accounts, it accounts for about 18 to 20% of global semiconductor manufacturing capabilities. Yeah, 68%. More critically, Taiwan manufactures an estimated 90 to 92% of the world's most advanced chips. The moment China says Taiwan, and they've been saying it, Taiwan is mine, you could see the risk, right? You could see how this could very quickly disintegrate into a horrible situation where China say, you're not buying my stuff? You sure? Because now I've got people in the streets, they're crying, they have no jobs, they're getting older, right? And they have nothing to do because, I'm having deflation, which is a big problem. 33 months of succession price decrease. I mean, it's great. The only thing is when you're the business, you have to sell less and less and less and less. That is not good. Then, you know what? I'm taking over Taiwan because it's ours anyway, and we always said so. And what are you going to do? You're going to come after us? You're going to come after us. What are you going to come after us with? With your submarines? Okay. Or you're going to come up with our ballistic missiles, which we have a robust inventory and testing cadence. U.S. is fielding, but later and at a smaller scale. I don't know if you notice, recently, with the war in Israel, with what's going on in Ukraine, how are they fighting? Are they fighting with tanks like in World War II? No. It's all about missiles, right? And guess who's doing all the missiles? Who's in advance? Hypersonic and ballistic missiles. China. China is doing it. So these are risks that you need to understand. I'm not saying that Monday morning we're going to have a war with China. I'm just saying that these are the things that God bless President Trump. Well, he's the president. You need to make sure that you understand these things because they will impact your lives later on. I always wanted to see, how many weeks, how many days, I think, worth of missiles. I don't think you're gonna like the answer. Worth of missiles. I want the latest for you. How many week worth of missiles does the U.S. have? Okay. Because this is all about the missiles. Those wars are all about, okay, here we go. Ready? You're not going to like that one either. Tomahawk and SM series. Wargaming simulations suggest that are in a high intensity, I didn't even mention China, in a high intensity conflict with China, e.g., and I didn't mention this, they came out automatically over Taiwan, for example, long-range anti-ship missile stocks could be exhausted in 3 to 7 days. And if I know this, you could bet that China knows that. The US only has 3 to 7 days worth of missile to fight a war with China. Well, we're not going to have a war with China, do we? We're not going to have COVID. We're not going to have tariffs with 100 countries. And yet it's happening. So the US, my friends, has a week, 3 to 7 days. Prior to the 2025, and somebody mentioned Israel, prior to the 2025 Israel-Iran conflict, the US had around 632 THAAD interceptors. During the conflict, about 150, right? And this is a topic that I brought up a couple of days ago. Basically, the US used 25% of its inventory and to give it to China, to Israel. And this is kind of why Trump went in there, and it's all tied together, not to make it overly complicated, but this is why he went in there and said, that's it. China and the United States are symbiotic, correct. And this is why basically Trump had to get in there and say, we got to stop this. I can't send you any more weapons. I can't send you any more missiles. I can't. I need it for myself. We're down 25% to 25%. That's a lot. We had estimated usage. So basically, in terms of the THAAD interceptors, these are the one that shoots out to fight the other missiles. There's a couple of days. The U.S. only has a couple of days to protect itself. That is nothing. That could be depleted. It could be depleted in a matter of days. Okay, so that's something to be careful. And you know, when they're talking back and forth, right? Don't you think that Trump knows that, or his people? And don't you think that China knows this? So you could imagine the discussions that are going on, right? Basically, take my stuff. Okay, well, sell me the rare earth mineral. Yeah, but if I allow you to get the rare earth minerals, you're gonna have more missiles to protect me in case this thing doesn't work and invade Taiwan. So I'm gonna give some to you. So that's why when you hear that there was an agreement with China, well, it was an agreement. So instead of having a 92% drop, it was down to only a 50%, but it was a 50% drop. And what do you think, you know, yesterday or 2 days ago, basically the White House is putting a priority on doing business with Beijing, because they basically could just sit there and say, well, I don't know, maybe I give it to you, maybe I don't give it to you. Okay. Now, of course, we're saying now the people in China are going to suffer, but don't forget, this is a communist country, so they could make those people suffer quite a bit. And I think they have suffered quite a bit right now. But ultimately, at some point, it becomes too much, and these people need to do something. And if the Chinese people are very upset and they have no jobs and they're running in the street with nothing to sell and not making any money, then we have to do something. And this is where, very quickly, what's happening is you have this hostility that's going up with China. Now, in this channel, I'm basically looking at about 10 risks, and let's run through them a little bit to make sure we're all on the same page. Do you feel that the fall of Taiwan is why the Trump-Biden administration has put so much on making chips? Yes, and Biden, to his credit, you know, the CHIP Acts saying we need to do something, right? We need to start making the stuff here. Right? The only thing is, why would Taiwan need hypersonic intercontinental missiles to attack an invading force that's less than 10 miles? No, Taiwan has no chance at all, right? I mean, they're doing 60% of the global production and 80%. But the only thing is, you know, anytime China wants to get in there, now obviously the U.S. is not going to let this happen. I don't know exactly what it means. I'm not going to let you happen, because once they're in, right, you can't. It's not like the U.S. has a rim of fire around Taiwan. I mean, if these people wants to get in there, by the time Monday morning arrives, they're there. And then you have to say, well, what are you going to do now that they're there? You're going to bomb Taiwan? You're going to destroy the factories? And then what's the point of Taiwan, right? It's a very, very, very contentious. Now, of course, it's easier not to deal with it, which that's what the U.S. has been doing, more or less. And just give them the dollars and let them send us what we need, and we're fine. Well, what is Trump bothering with all this? Because you need to deal with it at some point. Because what's happening, I believe that the long-term plan from China is to ultimately, once I know how to make all these things, I don't need you anymore. Well, you don't want our dollar? No, I don't need the dollar anymore. And that's why it's important. That's why you hear Trump saying all the time, I don't want BRICS to get too much power, because otherwise I will lose the ability to be the reserve currency. And if you're not the reserve currency anymore, then who needs you? Oh, but that's never going to happen. Really? England used to be all over the world, and Have you heard about that recently? Power versus the people, yes. I mean, you need to know this. I mean, this is out of the 10 risks that I have, and this is risk number 7, this is the most important one. And I want you to understand that risk because that risk is evolving every day. And frankly, this is what these people are getting paid for. But what do you think this big announcement that the White House puts a priority on doing business with Beijing? As the US heads toward fresh trade talks with China, that's exactly what's happening right now. You know, fresh talk. What do you mean fresh talk? I thought you talked already. Yeah, but we talked, but we want all the minerals and they don't want to give it to us. President Trump is increasingly focused on trying to strike an economic bargain with Beijing, one that aims to open Asia to more business and technology. The administration has used the pressure of tariffs to redirect the supply chains away from China, but the goal has been to weaken China's geopolitical influence. This is a big topic, and press American businesses to bring back the manufacturing job to the US. The thing is, that doesn't happen over the weekend. That takes years. So now the White House is actively encouraging China to buy more American technology. So buy our stuff. Frankly, I don't know. Let's talk a topic that I know very well, right? The electric cars, Tesla versus the Chinese equivalent. I mean, I don't know if you heard, it's cheaper and it's quite good. And quite frankly, it is also, I mean, in China, you could literally charge your electric car for like the time it takes to put gas in your car. So saying that, why don't you buy our stuff? And that's why, I mean, the good thing that we have is NVIDIA. So that's why, you know, Trump basically released and say, okay, NVIDIA, you could start selling artificial intelligence chips to Beijing. You know, the president wants an economic deal and he's pushing very hard to negotiate that deal. But basically, President Trump's first instinct is always diplomacy. Listen to this, okay? President Trump's first instinct is always diplomacy. And as a deal maker in chief, he wants to secure a better deal for the American people. And what's the second choice? Constructors of those factories also require a lot of building material from China. Yes, for 20 years, since China joined the World Trade Organization, China has been getting ready. For what exactly? Not for war. Nobody wants war because nobody wins in a war. Okay? Everything gets destroyed. No, to basically offer a better life for their people. And the way you do it is you keep them busy, working, doing things. These politics are almost a soap opera, and we are all in on it. Spartacus is right. It is soap opera, believe it or not. You like me? You don't like me anymore? Why? Why don't you want my stuff? Because I want to learn how to make it myself. You don't need to. I do everything for you. Just give me the dollar until I don't need you anymore. I mean, there is this very famous fable, a European fable, right, about the grasshopper and the ant, right? The US has been the ant for a long time. And China has been the grasshopper. And the grasshopper was working and working and working during the winter time and working. And all these people were working really hard. And now what's happening is they're saying, but we don't know how to make anything. But we're going to send you stuff. The only thing that we do make well, yeah, NVIDIA is a great company. And they said, well, we'll take that, but we're not going to take Tesla. We're not going to take, we make better things than you do. And I know because I work with them. When they go in competition, the Chinese students, the Chinese people, they work very hard and they do very incredible work. And why has the US stopped doing it? Because, you've got the dollar. This is something that I want to explain to my subscribers. The dollar is extremely important. So let's go through my 10 separate risks and make sure we understand them well. And then we'll go back to China. But basically, the first risk is the economy. The economy in the US is doing fine right now. I mean, it's okay, okay? The second thing that you need to worry about is investments. So right now, small cap focus, take a look at my Patreon channel, because in the Patreon channel, and one of the names that I have is IDR, which is rare mineral, and I recommended it in June. Wait until it gets a little bit weaker, maybe $16, $17, and it becomes interesting. The dollar obviously is a big question, because the US has been sleeping and cuddling with the dollar for many, many years, and it's been good for the US. In fact, Biden himself used the dollar as a weapon. How do you use the dollar as a weapon? It's very simple. You tell Ukraine, you tell Russia, you invaded Ukraine, therefore, from now on, I am taking you out of the dollar business. If you want to buy anything, you cannot use dollars anymore, because I have the power to do it. And Russia said, fine, then and that was the first. You have to be careful when you do things like that, because as you're weaponizing the dollar, you're forcing them to find another way of getting paid. And this is where the BRICS thing comes in. And that's a very dangerous thing to do, because the more you do this, the more they realize, maybe I don't need the dollar, right? The middle class is almost instinct. Spartacus, come on, let's get positive here. The number 4 is the tariffs. Now that is a doozy. Right now, my friend, what's going on is Europe is in heavy discussion with the US. That is something that you need to understand. That is a big topic right now. Why is this a big topic? It is a big topic because Europe does not want to pay any more tariffs than Japan. Now, are they going to get 15%? I am not so sure if that's going to happen. Are they going to be able to get away with threatening the US? I'm not so sure either. That's a possibility, but let's see what they do. But right now, Trump was in Scotland, and he met the European. This is a big topic. Remember how they said everything would be okay with COVID, and it's worse than ever. Yeah, exactly. So imagine. So that's a big worry as far as the tariffs are concerned, because quite frankly, right now, hey, where are we with the tariffs? The U.S. is making deals, and August 1st is coming up. And remember, we said August 1st, if you don't make a deal with me, you get 30%. What does that mean? It means that you need to get a deal with the U.S. You don't have a deal with the U.S., you get 30%. Now, 30%, that's a big amount. That's a big amount. So I don't think some countries are going to deal very well with that. The next one, and that's a doozy. Trump versus Powell. That's my risk number 5. The latest with Powell is that, as you all know, and I think I did a live on that yesterday. He was at the Federal Reserve, and he basically said that, look, a piece of paper. He says, look, you said you had 2.5. It's not 2.5 billion. It's 3.1 billion that this thing is costing. And then the Fed chair basically said to him, well, not really, because you're using an old building. And we say, oh, look, Trump made a mistake. No, Trump didn't make a mistake. He knows that. He's just pressuring the guy. He's pressuring the guy to quit. And don't forget, at the end of July, this is going to be important for you. Why? Because you're going to have potentially lower rates. Lower rates. And Trump knows how to play the card. Yeah, in fact, I will tell you that there was and the Wall Street Journal really is not a great fan of Trump, but now the word is coming up that Trump is basically they realize that they're using a certain technique to basically coerce the people into doing what they want them to do. And that's what he did with the guy yesterday. Don't you think he knows the buildings? He knows there were 3 buildings, and he knows the thing is not 3.1, it's 2.5, but to embarrass him in front of everyone, to pressure him. And don't forget, this guy is going to be under a lot of pressure by the end of the year. And on top, at the end of July, because they're going to decide there's going to be dissent. there is going to be dissent among the 12 people deciding on the rates. At least 2 of them are going to say we need lower rates. And he's going to have to deal with that. He's going to have to push and explain why. And then when he's going to go in front of the people, you know what the Fed does? They say, okay, we're going to keep rates the same. He's going to have all these people looking at him, asking questions. But why? It looks like you had a dissent. You had a dissent. So how are you dealing with this? How you justify that this governor, Fed governor, is wrong and you're right? And this and that. So the pressure is going to be building on. In addition to that, Bessent, the secretary, the Treasury Secretary, what he's going to do is that he's reviewing all of what the Fed is doing. Forget the building, everything else, the comments that he made. Maybe he's a little bit biased. Okay? So what's going to happen? That's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem because he's under pressure. And on top of that, he may be totally bypassed or disregarded because they're also looking for a new Fed chair. I think they're going to decide by the end of July, they're going to say the new Fed chair is Bessent. And then Bessent is going to start talking. Because remember at one point, the Treasury and the Fed were one and the same. And then it got split. Okay? And I'll do a video on this later on. But basically what you need to know, they were together at some point. So it's not highly unusual for the Treasury Secretary to become the next Fed chair. But the point is that what's going to happen is he's going to be under pressure. And at some point, they're going to say, yeah, forget what he's saying because the new Fed chair will lower rates. And he's going, but I'm the Fed chair. I'm saying we keep the rate the same. Yeah, but the market is going to look over you. You're going to be a lame duck chair. And therefore, maybe you should just quit. It'll be so much easier. And that's what's going to happen. Because Trump is not, hopefully you like him, you don't like it, but he is very consistent. He is not going to stop. He's a machine. He wants him out, okay? He's attacking by visiting. So that's the Trump versus the Powell. Now, the other one, and that one, you have to be very careful because that could go any moment. It's the Iran versus Israel. Now, believe it or not, recent news, not too long ago, from last night, the Trump administration has expressed frustration with Israel actions in recent days. Israel has emerged from a string of stunning military successes with nearly unchecked power in the Middle East. Now Washington is struggling to adjust. Now, I did tell you that. If you go back to what I told you originally, I did say that basically what's happening is Netanyahu is out of control. For the right reason, I'm sure, in his mind, but the only thing is, he's out of control. And the Trump administration in recent days has expressed frustration with Israeli action in Syria and in Gaza. The MAGA supporters in particular, be careful. Whenever you hear the word MAGA and Trump, he listens, are growing more critical of his support for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who they fear will drag the U.S. deeper into a morass of regional war. GM says Iran is posturing they don't want all-out war. Obviously not. Obviously not. I mean, they're not going to win. And I will tell you this, the inside scoop. I've been saying it, but in case you just joined the channel, basically the Iranian people, not so much the people, but the Iranian powers that be, the mullah, they want money. They want they spent about $2 trillion building the atomic bomb, which they never used and probably got destroyed by the U.S. So give me another $2 trillion. Why? Because I got my friends and my cohorts so that they can make money. These people make billionaires, millionaires. Someone's got to pull the concrete, right? Someone's got to make money for that. It's not a bunch of people that, they're people, they want to make money, they want to eat, they want to have a good time, they want to go on vacation, and that's what happens. So Israel this month bombed Syria military headquarters and presidential palace in Damascus. What did Syria do? Saying it was defending the Druze religious minority group from sectarian violence. And I don't know if you remember, but the potential next president of the United States, Marco Rubio, said, I think it was a misunderstanding. I think we're going to stop that. And he called them up and said, listen, what are you doing? The Druze, come on, you just want to control the situation. You want to keep it going. Enough. I mean, you can't. Secretary of State Rubio, again, Marco Rubio said the U.S. helped broker an agreement. What is that? That's the word they tell you. But what does it mean? What does that mean? It helped broker. Tell them, stop it right now. Stop it. Okay? You can't do this. This is not helping. Now, why is Netanyahu doing it? Well, because frankly, once he stopped fighting, too much uncertainty and fear. Yes, Spartacus is correct. Once it's done, once he stops, then he has to face a trial. Although Trump said, this is not fair, Netanyahu is a good guy. I mean, I don't know the detail of the case yet, but the point is that he wants him out. They want him out. They want him. Some people in Israel don't like Netanyahu, so that's what's going to happen. So, what do? Right? Israel withdrew widespread condemnation, including from the Trump administration. They stuck a Catholic church in Gaza, killing 3 people. And Israel said it was an accident. Stop it already. It's crazy. You're out of control. But remember, nothing was really done. If tomorrow Iran start building or move something where it doesn't belong and Israel sees it, he says, that's it, they're starting again. I am now bombing again. And now you need to help me. Of course, you have to, what I said before about the missiles, right? The U.S. lost a lot of inventory of missiles, and they sent it to Israel. And now, of course, they're sending it to Ukraine, which is a whole different topic. And you shouldn't be sending it to Ukraine because you don't have enough. You say, well, I'm not saying it, I'm sending it to them. Okay, fine. But still, this is not something the MAGA. So as you could see from a Trump perspective, he's managing many items in the raw and he's trying to control everything. And that is Israel going to back off? It won't come from outside influence. It will have to be grassroots. Yes, I mean, the Israeli people should stop him. But the problem is that he's got war power right now, so it's going to be difficult to stop him from doing anything. And that, at some point, right, you're going to bomb the wrong people, or the wrong people are going to say something, or you're going to find another good reason to continue. And then what is Trump going to do? And Trump, for good reason, he's not a warmonger. And frankly, now that you understand the situation, like I told you before, about the defense in the U.S., you realize that the U.S. does not have enough missiles. Yes, the U.S. has lots of submarines. The U.S. has a lot of good things. I mean, it is powerful in many ways, right? What does the U.S. have that is so powerful? Well, the U.S. is stronger in terms of global power projection, right? When they do the B-52 bomber, wow, look at that. They're good in air dominance, in nuclear deterrent, undersea warfare. But frankly, China is much better at ballistic missiles and hypersonic. And all the wars that we've seen, they're being fought with missiles. You haven't seen tanks fighting each other. You haven't seen people fighting each other in the streets, right? That's what they do. That's a problem. Air and war dominance. Right? That's what it's going to come down to. And like I said before, I just checked for you, the U.S. has enough 3 to 7 days worth of missiles. And if you're going to give it to Israel so they could do all the things that they do, which the U.S. is now saying, we don't really agree with all this, and you got to calm down, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a lot of damage. So what are they going to do? The White House said this past week that Trump was caught off guard by the bombing in Syria. And I'm telling you right now, Trump was caught off guard by the bombing of Iran by Israel. That I am pretty sure. I mean, he came in, and I'm starting to understand the guy. He came in and said, oh, look, we gave them 60 days, and it's 61 days. So therefore, we have allowed the Israeli, allowed Netanyahu to bomb Iran. The dissonance is in part reflect Israel's new position of power after a series of wars. I mean, they realize, listen, we control this whole game. There's no more Hezbollah, Hamas. All these people are gone. We're in control. So the fundamental change that has to be recognized in addressing the future of Middle East is that Israel is now the stronger power in the Middle East. They are the absolute, overwhelming, dominant military of the Middle East, like it or hate it. In fact, there is no real counterweight. When you have the power, when you're winning, it's tough to stop. Like right now, Trump is saying, I'm winning. Canada, 75% of your exports come to the US. You're going to pay me. Otherwise, you're in trouble. Right? China is already selling more imports to South America, Africa, and Australia and Canada. China already said they are not negotiating prices with the US. What do you think that the US is going back and negotiating back and forth? Because basically, with what's happening with China, and these are the main point I'm trying to make, is China is basically saying that I was about to be done with you, but I wasn't totally done, and because of your tariffs, but I'm not going to give you the rare earth mineral because I know how this ends. At some point, there's going to be some confrontation. There has to be a confrontation. Because at some point, what's going to happen is China is going to say, okay, I'm done. Thank you. I don't need your dollars anymore. And like this person say, which is Ruji, you should change your name, HXHX, basically that China is already dealing. Yes, they've been dealing, they have been the road initiative. They've been doing in Africa, in South America, all over the place they've been doing it. And the US hasn't done anything. And now, obviously, it's the chickens are coming to roost. So what's going to happen is China at some point is going to say, I don't need to deal with you, thank you. The US is going to say, well, who wants? Canada? By that time, Canada would have found someone else. Europe, they've been trying to go with China, right? And so at some point, they don't want to pay, and the US is going to be out. And what is the US going to do? You know, how do you stop that? Well, I mean, you need a war. You need to get into some sort of war to stop it. But you're going to go to war with China? I don't know. Be careful because those missiles are going to be expensive. You know what I mean? You could see how everything is building up and building up and building up. At some point, it explodes. But that's what's been happening with Israel and Iran, right? For years, you heard this. You know, they're building the bomb. They're building the bomb. You're not listening. People say, yeah, but we're going to bomb Iran. You're crazy. And what about you have all of these Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon. They're going to come over. They're going to destroy you. Look what they did. A couple of guys showed up and they came into Israel and did all that damage, and you couldn't do anything. And you're going to do this. Guess what? I'm going to show you I could do it. And that's what they did. And now I'm in control. I mean, I have the power, so I'm not going to let it go. So you got to be very careful. So that was the Iran versus. We talk about the China versus the U.S. and of course. China versus US, yes. And then, of course, risk number 8 is inflation. And inflation in the US, I think you should know something that is quite important, is that when we're talking about inflation, first of all, you should know that right now, Amazon have started increase its prices. So that's working. But the information that I'm getting from my sources is that there is a bit of a problem with the way inflation is being calculated. Let me tell you what I think is going on. What's happening is the 30%, about I believe 30% of the of inflation is not properly calculated, and that's a problem because the information that we're looking is not correct. And that could be a lot of damage because where do we get the information from? This information that we're getting. Walmart has stated they will be passing these costs onto the consumer. Have they said that already? I haven't I haven't heard about that. I mean, I heard it in the past. I know that, but basically here it is, okay? So let's talk about inflation and let me teach you something important. The way CPI is calculated, and it's important because the Fed is looking at this, and the Fed is going to be looking at this number at the end of July. The way CPI is collected, basically you have the BLS, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They collect approximately 90,000 price quotes every month. That's how they say whether or not inflation is up, covering 200 different item categories. And there are 700 field collectors going across 75 urban areas. When data is not available, what do? Well, they typically develop estimates for approximately 10% of the sale of the CPI calculation. However, the share, and this is the important part, the share of data in the CPI is now estimated has increased significantly in recent months and is now above 30%. That means that when they say inflation is up, they don't know what they're looking at. It's mostly estimated. In other words, almost a third of the price going into the CPI at the moment are guessed and based on other data collection in the CPI. That's a problem because now, of course, it's not a problem for you because you say, because I could see prices have gone up. I could see that, right? And in fact, you could see recent articles saying that what's going on is Amazon has increased 2,300 prices. So that's happening. Now that's a big problem. And I'll tell you why this is a big risk. Because at the end of the day, Trump is pushing for lower rates. Everyone is pushing for lower rates because he says that's going to create business and enhance business. And it's going to be good for you. And I think you're going to see lower rates, by the way. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel as we always look for our subscribers. And I want to teach you, explain to you what's going on, and really go into the depth of the details for you to know what's happening. But basically what we're saying about CPI, which is my risk number 8, is that 30% of the data is basically estimated, guesstimated. And why is this bad? It is bad because what's going to happen is they're going to look at the numbers and it's not a real inflation number. And that's a problem because it's not a real inflation number. They're going to look at it and they're going to say, we don't have inflation, or we have inflation, or the inflation has not gone. So the problem is, as if you don't have any inflation, which means the business conditions are slowing down, and you're keeping rates elevated too long, you're going to force some slowdown artificially. And that's not good because then you're going to slow the economy down because you think the inflation is here. He says, no, inflation is actually all the way down here, but you're measuring it correctly. Or worse, you think that inflation is here, but it's not here, it's there. And Trump is successful. Unfortunately, he's going to be successful at everything so far. I don't see why he's not going to get a rate decrease. So if inflation goes up and you are also reducing the inflation rate and basically lowering rates, which is going to be great for you when you want to buy a house or whatever, what's going to happen? You're going to create inflation. And that's not going to be good. That happened in the 70s when basically Richard Nixon said to his Fed chair, Arthur Burns, who has a horrible reputation now, lower the rates. And he says, okay, fine, boss. You see what happened in the 70s? Do you see what happened in 1980? Do you know how high the rates went, right? Inflation was out of this roof. And how did they kill inflation? Because that kill is the word. Walmart has stated that they will be passing these costs. I'll double check that. What happened is they basically said, you know what? Raise the rates. And they kill the economy, kill the people, kill inflation. But that you don't want that either. And that's why it's important. So risk number 9 is Russia. And as I've explained yesterday, they already, Sam's Club raised everything by $2. Wow. Okay, so my subscribers are telling you that they are seeing inflation. The only problem is because 30% of the data, when we say we're seeing, you're seeing it, I'm seeing it, but they are going to be looking at the CPI, which is basically 30%. 30% of the data is estimated, is not real. And that's a problem in the situation that we're in. So now the next thing, the risk number 9 is going to be Russia. Russia. Yeah, don't joke around because you're picking on Russia right now. You're basically telling Russia and the US by sending those weapons to Russia, to Ukraine against Russia is a problem. It's going to be a problem because what's going to happen is Russia, by the way, like I said yesterday in my live, what Russia is doing right now, it's called the NetEx test site expansion near Arkhangelsk, the Nikosa range, site of the deadly 2019 Skyfall missile incident, is adding massive new building. That's a fact. They're adding massive new buildings and touchpads. Activity suggests resumed advanced missile, possibly including nuclear power cruise missile testing. Now, of course, you can say, well, he's threatening. Well, hopefully, but they're actually doing it. They haven't tested everything, okay? Officials are stating readiness to resume testing. Putin has positioned the move as a response to perceived U.S. nuclear modernization and NATO deployment, framing readiness to test as a defensive stance. I mean, don't forget that NATO very recently, the new guy, the guy that called Trump daddy, he basically said that he repeated a warning that he has made public at least 3 times this year. The Western alliance is severely lagging behind Moscow and ammunition production. Putin and Trump are good men. Pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. We shall see. Well, since you bring up the topic of Maxwell, you should know that yesterday, and this is so unprecedented, the Deputy Attorney General basically went to see Ghislaine Maxwell and basically said to her, what do you know? And she was very helpful. She talked about all of the things that she knew, and we have to be careful. Because she has the ability to create a big mess right now. And this is let's put it this way. Whenever you have a MAGA topic, you have to be very careful. MAGA topic has to do with Ghislaine Maxwell. MAGA topic has to do with what's going on with what went on with Iran. That's a MAGA topic. MAGA topic has to do with what Trump is doing by giving weapons to Ukraine. They don't like that. MAGA topic is with the Israel situation and the support for Israel. Needless to say, the MAGA people are starting to get a little bit pissed off. Right? And who's a war criminal? And Lifeline. And if you have too many people that are upset at Trump, the MAGA people, Trump will lose its power. And the MAGA power is extremely important. So let's not forget about that. So, as far as China is concerned, which is a topic of the day, the basic point is the following. China needs to sell whatever they're producing. China was in the midst of getting a control and understanding and the ability to produce almost everything that it needed. For what purpose? We shall see. Trump came in right at the middle, well, or maybe towards the end, but he stopped it. And that's why they're very upset. How does this get resolved? Well, obviously, Trump is shifting to deal-making mode in China. Let's deal-making as opposed to coercing, right? Meaning, let's make a deal, as opposed to you're going to do this for me, otherwise I'm not doing it. I don't care. So so Trump is basically negotiating. Now, is he going to be successful? That's going to be a question. But the point is, they are negotiating, they are talking, and the reason Trump is doing it is because he kind of have no choice, and he's basically offering to China, the U.S. business. But China, I don't think China wants any of what the U.S. has. China basically wants to keep the money coming its way so that it learns how to make these things. For what purpose? So Trump is saying, well, take the NVIDIA stuff and take, I say, what is it that you have that I don't make better, right? Seventh Cloud, how you doing? You don't know how to make anything anymore. So I don't really, and this is a dangerous roadway in here, very dangerous, because what's going to happen if I don't need your stuff, then I don't need you. But I have paper. It's called the dollar. You know what? We have a new currency. It's called BRICS. So I don't need you either. You're immaterial to me. And now that I have the power, now I am going to be the world new power. I'm going to be the sender, the reserve currency. You know what I mean? This is where these type of things go. So you have to be very careful how far you push this, because that could be a big issue. In fact, I've noticed that there's a more and more China topic did you know, for example, that China is building the world's biggest telescope? Top American astronomers are hunting for clues about a 48-foot wide scope that Beijing isn't talking about. That just came out. Okay, why? There are clues. In January, state-owned astronomical instruments said on social media that it won a $22 million bid for a dome to surround 48-foot telescope. And top Chinese astronomers told state media he wanted to finish the telescope before he retires. Yet Chinese officials haven't directly acknowledged it. So, I mean, it's not so much we're going to talk about telescope, but the point is they are building, in the process of building the tallest telescope. Now, of course, I talked to you about the fact that Trump is shifting deal making. Why? Because coercing doesn't work. It doesn't. Coercing is basically what China did, what Trump did with Canada and with Mexico, and he's doing it with Europe. Okay, Europe is in big trouble if they can't do a deal with the U.S. But Beijing trade tactics. Ukraine stance called pull over Europe and China ties. What does that mean? Well, basically, after Trump's election, China and Europe sought warmer ties, but rift over China. So rift over Russia and trade spark conflict. The only reason Europe is not, dealing with China is because they, you're like Russia. You're with Russia. The human interaction that's not really working for Europe. So the U.S. says government employees blocked from leaving China. Disclosure of the exit ban of an employee in the U.S. Patent and Trade Office. It's getting tight. It's getting very tight between China and the U.S. Now, how much longer are they going to be able to do it? I don't know, but it is a problem. It is a big problem, because at some point something is going to happen. What could happen? Well, many things could happen. These people could decide suddenly that, you know what, you're not buying my stuff, we're in trouble. How much in trouble is China? Let me tell you. What is the actual situation in China? Well, the strength of the business in China right now is that they have a leading global position in EV, renewable energy. They have resilient manufacturing. They have emerging capital markets. But one thing that they're not doing well, they have persistent deflation, property sector under strain, demographic decline, continuing structural overcapacity. So at some point, this whole thing needs to happen. Does China have a strong domestic economy? yes, they have a strong economy. Well, depends what you mean by economy. But basically, if I look at the economy right now, I could tell you that China posted a strong expected 5.2% year-over-year GDP gain. That's not bad. We're looking maybe at 2.5%. However, growth is expected to slow to 4 to 4.5%. And the risk that China has is deflation. Does China have a strong? Yes, it's strong right now, but it's going to get weaker. And of course, the way China operates is very simple. They basically give money to build factories, and then they give money for the people to actually buy the product. So it's artificially maintained. That is something to watch out for. So, my dear friends, subscribers, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. What we're going to do over the next over the next week, we have very important topics that we are going to discuss. So let me tell you a little bit what's coming up next week, because I think you're going to like it. I think these are very topical and very important things to know. Okay, the first one we're going to be talking about over the coming weeks. So we're going to talk about the CPI situation, which is basically, we don't even know what we're looking at anymore. 30% of the data is fact, right? Who is paying those tariffs in the US? Who is actually paying? You're going to be surprised when you're going to find out who's actually paying. We're going to talk about, that $500 billion that Trump got from Japan? It's what you call a sovereign fund. So what? Well, basically, it's slush money that Trump could do whatever he wants to do with it. He's going to be competing with actually American companies too. It's amazing. We're going to talk about European stocks. We're going to talk about the AI boom, and we're going to talk about Ghislaine Maxwell, because that's going to be very interesting when it happens